Reign of Terror refers to the period that followed the death of King John. During that period, the Stuart expelled John's family and supporters from the land. The war between King John and the Stuart was called the Investiture Controversy. King John was the Caesar and supreme authority, while Stuart was in charge of spiritual and religious affairs. King John was the son of Queen Elizabeth I, who was a member of the Tudor dynasty. The Tudor family legacy would continue through the lineage of King John, known as the Ottonians. The Stuart wanted to be the supreme authority, and so he conspired with rebels. The Queen Elizabeth died as she gave birth to John, and so he was raised in the household of King Charles, who made him the Dauphin to the French throne and ruled England as John's regent. Prior to the Stuarts' rebellion, there were two groups of rebels. The first one was Owen Tudor's army. After the death of Owen, the rebels turned against his brother Jasper Tudor, and killed him alongside all the other Tudors in the palace of the family. Henry was made the leader of this group by the rebels. The other rebels were soldiers in the army of King Charles of the French. They mutinied against Charles and claimed to be followers of the House Valois, whose surviving member was Charles's cousin called Catherine. Their commander was the husband of Catherine Valois. When the commander died, Catherine quickly married Owen amidst speculation of his involvement in the death of Catherine's husband. The disgruntled French mutineers decamped from Owen's fold and became the Scots. Later, when King Charles dispatched his French army to England to avenge the Tudors, the Danish faction of the army led by Conrad mutinied and captured the French general Louis. He was sold to Henry and he turned to be helpful in Henry's quest to establish himself as king of the land. Louis became Henry's vizier and ruled a section of the land. When Edmund Tudor died, his wife Lady Margaret Beaufort briefly succeeded him and tried to rule from Italy, where she lived in exile. English sources refer to her as Anne Boleyn and they record her execution. After that, Mary was made queen as she was the eldest child of Edmund. The Irish rebels preferred Henry, while Scots supported Mary. Both Mary and Henry were children of Catherine, but the latter's father was the general of the French mercenaries. A few months into Mary's reign, she was forced to abdicate the throne for Henry. This led to the conflicts between the Scots and the Irish. 4 months after the death of Edmund Tudor, his little daughter called Eleanor escaped confinement, fled to Italy where she was crowned as Queen Elizabeth I. Consequently, Henry never became King of England. The Scots continued to recognize Mary as their queen while they rejected Elizabeth. Many years later, Elizabeth was killed by Conrad. Her son John was raised in the court of King Charles of the French, who was later overthrown by Louis during John's minority. During the investiture controversy, the Stuart was joined by Henry, Louis and Conrad in the conspiracy against John. The Stuart reached out to John and informed the king that he was ready to submit to his authority. So they organized a feast to consummate the peace agreement. The Stuart brought with him his allies, the rebels, to the feast. Unsuspectingly, John was struck behind by one of the traitors in Conrad's pay. The Stuart promised to make Conrad his Grand Vizier after eliminating the Caesar. After the death of King John, the Stuart and his allies established a new order or regime whose period of dominance became the Reign of Terror. Both Conrad and Louis contended for the position Caesar, which was now relegated to the Grand Vizier of the Stuart. The Stuart had broken his promise to Conrad after all that, and so the conflict escalated into full-fledged war between the Stuart and Conrad. Henry supported Conrad while Louis stayed loyal to the Stuart. Conrad briefly defeated the Stuart, who then fled to the south, from where later returned with Indians. The leader of the Indian allies of Stuart was a magician or magus. The Stuart made both Louis and the magus his deputies. Louis became the viceroy while the magus became pope. The supporters of Stuart became Catholics while those of Conrad became Protestants. These two groups were jointly called Jews, as they originally supported the Stuart during the investiture controversy. A third group emerged among the Scottish supporters of the Stuart. They recognized the steward as the supreme authority, but they rejected both Louis and the Pope. They became the dissenters. The steward became the supreme authority. The Scots accorded him the regnal title of King James VI. Those who claimed to be his representatives referred to themselves as the Stuarts established a government Scotland. The Stuarts never supported Henry either, and they joined both the Pope and Louis among other loyal supporters of the Stuart in the war against Conrad and his Protestant followers. Stuart's men were now called the Loyalists while those who followed Conrad were called Protestants. They successfully dislodged King John's son, the Prince of Wales, and his mother, the Queen, from France. The family was the surviving branch of the ancient regime, and their followers were known as the Legitimists. Various dynasties in Europe claim descent from these groups. The Bourbons of France, Spain and Portugal was established by Louis and his follower who refer to the Stuart as Philip. The Capetians refers to the dissenters who became the Catholic Habsburgs and the Conrad's followers called Protestant Habsburgs. While wars raged between the Protestants, Catholics and dissenters, the violence and chaos marked the so-called Reign of Terror. The Legitimists were reinvigorated by the return of the exiled populations in what French sources refer to as the Thermidorian reaction. The Stuarts, also called Jacobins, were defeated and overthrown. William of Orange was made the Grand Vizier of the Ottonian Emperor, the Prince of Wales. This is the period when the Dutch House of Orange appear in England as the Protestant Habsburgs. While the Irish call him William, the English call him George, because he was among those who returned from the afterlife with the Caesar. 3 years into his reign as the Grand Vizier and High Priest of the Ottonians, William rebelled against the Prince of Wales and briefly overthrew the Ottonians. A year later, he was defeated, captured and executed. The Dutch sources refer to the Prince of Wales as Balthazar Gerard. The French refer to him as Edward Francis, while in the East he was called Emperor Selim of the Ottomans. During the 1 year that he was driven from the imperial court, Selim left Istanbul, Turkey, moved to the Beaufort Castle in Hejaz, then proceeded to South Arabia and crossed into Ethiopia before proceeding to Egypt. During his wanderings, the Omanis called him Sultan Qais. The Ethiopians referred to him as Fazil, the same name he was called by the Turks of Najd. His followers in Sudan called him Askia Muhammad al-Tori. It was the story of the rebellious Grand Vizier that his Protestant followers in Geneva, Switzerland adopted to the biblical narrative relating to the trial, persecution and execution of Jesus. His body was preserved by his followers who thought he would resurrect someday. After their defeat, the Protestants left Europe and proceeded to Kolkata in Bengal, India. They built the Fort William in the vicinity of the Black Hole of Calcutta and kept his remains there. Sometimes later, the body was returned to Jebel Amel where his Danish maternal uncles had established a colony of the Druze and Sheikhs. It was there that the Turk Protestants began to refer to themselves as the Ismailis. The name Christ was originally applied to the Caesar, whom the Ottomans referred to as Mehmed Karichi. His son became the first Ottonian emperor, known to the Ottomans as Sultan Selim. The Legitimists and all those who followed the Caesar, therefore referred to themselves as Christians. The Grand Vizier and his Protestant followers also became Christians because it was the Caesar who made him the Grand Vizier. It is for this reason that the Protestant House of Orange is also considered a branch of the House of Nassau and cousins of the Ottonians. The Protestant followers of the Grand Vizier based in Geneva established their own Christian society where they refer to the Vizier as the Christ. Other sources portray the Grand Vizier as an ally and close associate of the Caesar. In Arabia, his followers are known as the Twelvers or Ismailis. They are now considered a sect of Islam. Unlike in Christianity where the Caesar has been substituted with the Vizier, in Islam the Caesar retains his position as the head and founder of the faith. The Twelvers on the other hand believe that the Kaaba was built by Abraham and Ismail, hence they are the founders of the faith. In India, the Caesar is called Krishna, son of Indira. The Vizier, who is portrayed as his partner, ally or twin is referred to as Krishna, son of Vasudeva, and is the central figure of the Hindu religion. The King James Bible is dedicated to the steward whom the Scots call King James VI. In the Old Testament, the Grand Vizier is also known as Joshua the high priest. The vision of Zechariah relates how Joshua was retrieved from the fire and elevated to a high priest. Then he was instructed to obey and follow certain commands. Such instructions included one that directed that there must be understanding between the high priest and the king, whom the book refers to as the branch. When the Jacobins were defeated and removed, the Grand Vizier and his followers became the Montagnards, or people of the mountain. During conflict between Joshua the high priest and the branch, King Zerubbabel, God reminds the king that he will finish the work he started with his own hands, no matter how big the mountain is, that stands before him. This followed the proclamation of Joshua after